At 2:13 in the morning, Daniel heard someone knocking on the wall beside his bed. Not the front door, not a window, the wall. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. He told himself it was the pipes. The old building settling. Maybe a neighbor. But then it happened again. 3 knocks. This time the sound came from behind his closet. Daniel pulled the closet door open. There was nothing there, just darkness, and a wall that had always been solid. The next night the knocking returned. But this time, something was different. A thin line had appeared across the wall. A door. A door Daniel had never seen before. And when he placed his hand on the handle, someone on the other side whispered his name. The terrifying part, Daniel lived alone. And according to the building plans, there had never been a room behind that wall. Story 1. The door that shouldn't exist. Daniel had lived in the apartment for almost 3 years. It was an old building, the kind with narrow hallways, wooden floors, and walls that seemed to make strange noises at night. But Daniel had gotten used to it. The pipes rattled. The floor creaked. Sometimes he heard footsteps from the apartment above him. Nothing unusual. Until the knocking started. The first time it happened at exactly 2:13 in the morning. Daniel was lying in bed when he heard it. 3 knocks. Slow. Heavy. Coming from the wall beside him. He sat up. For several seconds he didn't move. Then he heard it again. Knock. 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 Daniel turned on the lamp. The wall looked completely normal. He even pressed his hand against it. Nothing. No vibration. No sound. He eventually convinced himself it had been the pipes. The next night, it happened again. 2 a time. 3 knocks. This time, they came from behind his closet. Daniel slowly opened the closet door. His clothes hung exactly where he had left them. The back wall was solid. No opening. No hidden space. Nothing. But the knocking continued. From the other side, Daniel didn't sleep much that night. The following morning, he called the building manager. He asked if there was another apartment behind his bedroom wall. The manager immediately said no. Your apartment is on the end of the building, he explained. There's nothing behind that wall except the outside. Daniel didn't mention the knocking. He felt embarrassed. Maybe he had imagined it. Maybe exhaustion was affecting him. So that night he stayed awake. He placed his phone on the nightstand. He set the camera to record and waited. At 2:13 in the morning, the knocking started. 3 times, exactly as before. Daniel watched the wall. Nothing moved. Then slowly, a thin crack appeared. At first it looked like a shadow, a vertical line, running from the floor to the ceiling. Daniel stopped breathing. The line became darker. Then another line appeared across the top. He stepped backward. The wall was changing. A rectangular outline was forming in the plaster. A door. A real door. Where there had only been a wall hours earlier. Daniel reached for his phone. The camera was still recording. He walked closer. The door had no visible hinges, no frame, just a dark wooden surface built directly into the wall. And in the center, a small brass handle. Daniel stood in front of it for almost a minute. Then he heard something. A voice, very quiet, coming from the other side. Daniel. He froze. The voice said his name again. Daniel. He knew that voice. It sounded like his mother. But his mother had been dead for 6 years. Daniel backed away from the door. The handle slowly moved. Not from his side. From the other side. Someone was trying to open it. Daniel ran out of the apartment. He spent the night at a hotel. The next morning he returned with the building manager. But the door was gone. The wall was completely normal. No crack, no handle, no sign that anything had ever been there. Daniel showed the manager the video, but when he played the recording, the footage had changed. The camera showed Daniel sleeping. Then at 2:13, the screen went black. For exactly 47 seconds, when the image returned, Daniel was standing in front of the wall, but the door wasn't visible. Only Daniel was, standing there, with his hand raised, as if he were knocking. The building manager told him to leave the apartment. Daniel did. He moved out 2 days later, but the story should have ended there. It didn't. 3 weeks after moving into a new apartment across town, Daniel woke up at 2:13 in the morning. He heard something. 3 slow knocks, coming from the wall beside his bed. And then, a voice whispered from the other side. Daniel. This time the voice wasn't his mother's. It was his own. Story 2. The voicemail from room 214. When Emily checked into the motel, it was already past midnight. She had been driving for nearly 6 hours and was too tired to continue. The motel was old. The sign outside flickered between vacancy and darkness. Inside, the receptionist handed her a key. "Room 214, he said. Emily noticed something strange. The receptionist looked at the key for a moment before giving it to her. Then he asked, "Are you sure you want that room?" Emily laughed. She thought he was joking. The room itself looked normal. A bed, a small television, a bathroom, and an old telephone beside the bed. Emily locked the door and went to sleep. At exactly 3:17 in the morning, the telephone rang. Emily woke up instantly. She stared at it. The phone rang again. Then again. She picked it up. "Hello?" There was silence. Emily could hear something on the other end. Breathing, slow, heavy breathing. "Hello?" she repeated. A voice finally whispered, "Don't open the door." Emily sat up. "What?" the voice repeated. "Don't open the door." Then the call ended. A few seconds later, someone knocked. Emily froze. 3 slow knocks. She stayed completely silent. Another knock, this time harder. Emily walked toward the door. Then she remembered the voice. "Don't open the door." She looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. She waited. Nothing. After several minutes, she returned to bed. The phone rang again. Emily answered. This time the voice was crying. "Please." She recognized the voice. It was her own voice. Emily dropped the phone. Then someone knocked again. She didn't sleep for the rest of the night. At sunrise, she immediately went to the reception desk. The receptionist was there. Emily told him everything. The phone call, the knocking, the voice. The receptionist's face went pale. He asked her one question. "What time did the phone ring?" 3:17. The man slowly looked down. Then he said, "Room 214 has been empty for 11 years. Emily stared at him. "What?" The receptionist explained that a woman had once stayed in that room. At 3:17 in the morning, she had called the front desk. She kept saying the same thing. "Someone is outside my door." The receptionist had gone upstairs, but when he arrived, the room was empty. The woman was never found. Emily immediately demanded to leave. Before she walked out, she noticed something on the reception desk. A small pile of old motel records. On top was a photograph of the woman who had disappeared from room 214. Emily looked at it. Then she stopped breathing, because the woman in the photograph was wearing the exact same jacket Emily had been wearing that night. And on the back of the photograph was a handwritten message. She finally answered the door. Story 3. The Last Train. Michael had always hated late-night train rides, but one evening he had no choice. His car had broken down, and the last train home was leaving in 10 minutes. He reached the station just as the doors were closing. The platform was almost completely empty. Only one other person was waiting, an old man sitting on a bench. Michael quickly boarded the train. Inside, every seat was empty, except for one. The old man from the platform was sitting at the very back. Michael thought that was strange. He had never seen him board. Still, Michael sat several rows away. The train started moving. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. Then Michael noticed something. The train had been traveling for almost 20 minutes, but it hadn't stopped at a single station. He looked out the window. There were no buildings, no lights, only complete darkness. Michael checked his phone. No signal. Then the train suddenly stopped. The lights flickered. The old man slowly turned toward him. "Don't get off," he said. Michael stared at him. "What?" The old man pointed toward the doors. "Whatever you hear, don't get off." Before Michael could ask anything else, someone began knocking on the train doors. 3 slow knocks. Michael looked around. The train was completely empty. The knocking continued. Then a voice came from outside. "Please open the door." It sounded like a woman. Michael stood up. The old man immediately grabbed his arm. "Don't." The voice outside began crying. "Please, I'm hurt." Michael looked through the window. There was nothing outside, just darkness. Then the voice changed. It became deeper, and suddenly, Michael heard his own voice. "Please open the door." He stepped backward. The old man was still holding his arm. The train began moving again. The knocking stopped. For the next few minutes, neither of them spoke. Finally, Michael asked, "What was that?" The old man didn't answer. Instead, he asked Michael a question. "What year is it?" Michael looked at him strangely. 2026. The old man slowly shook his head. Then he whispered, "No." Michael noticed something. The man's clothes looked old, very old. His face was pale, and his hands were covered in dirt. The train suddenly stopped again. This time the doors opened. The old man stood up. Michael grabbed his arm. "You said not to get off." The old man looked at him. "I said you shouldn't." Then he stepped out of the train. Michael watched as the old man walked into the darkness. The doors closed. The train began moving. A few minutes later, it finally arrived at Michael's station. He rushed off the train, but when he turned around, there was no train, only an empty platform. The next morning, Michael went to the station office. He described the old man. The employee behind the desk became completely silent. Then he showed Michael an old newspaper article. It was about a train accident that had happened 30 years earlier. The final train of the night had disappeared from the tracks. Everyone on board had died, including the train conductor and one passenger, an old man who had been found sitting alone at the back of the train. Michael looked at the photograph. His stomach dropped. It was the same man. The employee noticed Michael's expression. "What is it?" Michael pointed at the photograph. "That man." The employee looked at him. "What about him?" Michael whispered. "He was sitting on my train last night." The employee slowly turned the newspaper around. At the bottom of the article was one final detail. The accident had happened at exactly 2:13 in the morning, and according to the station's records, Michael's train had arrived at his station at 2:13, 30 years after the crash. 3 stories, 3 different places, and 3 moments when reality seemed to break apart. A door that appeared where no door should have existed. A motel room that may have remembered a woman who disappeared decades ago. And a train that arrived 30 years after its final journey. Maybe these were coincidences. Maybe there is a logical explanation for all of them. But sometimes, the most terrifying stories are the ones that leave behind just enough evidence to make you question what really happened. Because if you ever hear 3 knocks in the middle of the night, from the other side of a wall, from an empty hallway, or from a door that shouldn't exist, don't answer too quickly. And if you ever find yourself on a train traveling through complete darkness, and someone tells you not to get off, listen to them. Because some places are not meant to be found, some doors are not meant to be opened, and some journeys were never meant to end. This is the Hidden Fear Archive, and the question is, what would you do if the next unexplained story was yours? Until next time, keep the lights on,